welcome to our the Impact Assessment Workshop. We are very glad to have you here with us today. This workshop is made by a collaboration of the Nova Leadership for Impact Students Club, which I am a part of, and the B Lab Portugal. Just some reminders for our Q&A part of the workshop. So if you have any questions, you can either raise your hand at the end of the workshop to ask a question, or you can send a direct message to QA in the chat. So you have to open the chat, click to, and then change from everyone to QA, and you can send your question there. So I want to start by thanking our speaker today, Luís Amado, and also to everyone that helped us prepare this event. We really hope you enjoy it. Luís, I pass it on to you now.
Thank you, Catarina. It's a pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to end the week in such good company. Let's see if you can have a good time in trying to share you how we can use some tools or learn about some tools that can help us to impact the world in a good way, hopefully. I will try to share my presentation with you, and feel free to drop questions. I will try to be with an eye on chat as well, but at the end we'll for sure have time to go over whatever is needed. And are trying to change. So a lot of things are coming up saying that we need to change. We might think this is something new, that is some situation in which we arrive. And in fact, it's some situation in which we arrived, but it's nothing new, because this sentence that you have in front of you has already a couple of years. Actually, it was written by this gentleman that we know by the cars that we see on the streets, and when he started the Ford Motor Company. So he was not basically, he was a businessman willing to sell a lot of cars, and sometimes not even creating a lot of choices to his consumers. But even though he has a concern with the business that he was managing. And this is coming to another situation that is presently the business schools, and we in the management reviews, etc. We see a lot the purpose, the need of purpose to manage business properly, and this is more and more frequent. And we might again think that is something new, but it's not, as you can see here, or even stronger in here in this sentence. So what we face is that there are, for a couple of years, that some of the things have been forgotten to focus on the short term. That is my reading of what is happening in the last couple of years or decades, we should say. And a lot of people do not know how to answer this. And I already experienced to ask this question about what is the purpose of your organization in a room. Unfortunately, we are not now able to be in a room, but people that are working in companies, in different organizations, don't know the purpose of their companies. And that is something that is quite strange. And we, at least here in Portugal, we have the expression that also works a bit in English, maybe not so well. That is, when we do something that we don't want to, we say, sorry, it was not on purpose. So if people do not know the purpose that they are going to work, maybe they are sorry to go to work, so that they don't go happy, they don't produce. But this is another fight, if we can say so. That's not the fight I'm bringing in today, because we need to work on finding that purpose, and that is something that is challenging and relevant. But being said that, the idea of the capitalism needs a reset, like Financial Times was saying, and was addressed by the roundtable meeting with a lot of the important CEOs of big companies that were saying that it's not enough to create money for the shareholders. We need to deliver to the customers, to invest in our employees, to deal ethically with suppliers, to support communities, etc. Was a sign that this shift was needed. And what happened in the days after is that we, as B Corp movement that believe the business should work for everyone, replied in the Financial Times ad of a full page saying, okay, let's work together. Let's go to work. Let's use to improve the efficiency, and for purpose we need to manage for a positive impact, and we can go. And that's why the movement, B Corp movement, exists from the purpose to the performance. And so because we have tools to manage the purpose to create impact. And as you probably already heard, and it's quite common to hear in management, we need to measure to manage. And we are used to measure a lot of things in financial indicators like EBITDAs, etc. But maybe to change, we need to start using other indicators and measure other things. And this is what I'm coming to talk with you about for a while. The idea of this tool from the B Corp movement that is called the B Impact Assessment is an assessment that goes to the different layers of the company, represented here in these pictures, that are of course integrated, because the company is like a living being that needs to have everything working well orchestrated. And the assessment addresses 5 different areas, from governance to environment to workers to community and to customers. And here are some examples of what is addressed, what is measured in this assessment. So it goes from the mission and the transparency in terms of the governance to the holidays and employee satisfaction inquiries in the employees. In terms of community, the job creation, the suppliers and outsourcing policies, who is outsourced, what is outsourced, how are the suppliers screened, etc. In terms of the environment, if people are recycling or not, if they are carbon offsetting, if they measure their emissions, if they have objectives to reduce them, if they are complying with those objectives, etc. And in terms of clients, how they are treated. Are they taken into account in the overall process? Do the company hears about what the customers have to say? Do they give warrants, etc.? So these are basically the areas that are addressed, some of them. And as you can understand, this is a global approach to the company in terms of measuring the impact that it can create for the society in which it is inserted. So it covers different areas, the 5 that I told you. Here you can see a bit how deep they are, and it's divided into a more operational area in which every company has to have a say, because it's something that companies always have. And the others, it depends a bit on the companies to have them or not, depending on the kind of business that they have. If we are speaking about a company that produces solar panels, independently of the way they treat collaborators, they relate with their suppliers, etc., every time they sell a solar panel, they might be contributing to reduce the CO2 emissions. And so that might be accounted as impact business model in the environmental area. And this is true for other areas in terms of the different kinds of companies. While doing the assessment, you get the score immediately. And this score is benchmarked with peers. So in this case, we were benchmarking against a small company, against 6,042 other companies similar to this one. And not only in the global score, but also in the score of the different areas. And we can even open it a bit more. We can see it a bit later. So my idea now, and let's see if the technology supports me, was going through the assessment with you so you can see the tool, because the idea of the workshop is about the B Impact Assessment. So I'm going to show you the B Impact Assessment that is is an open tool that everyone can register and use it for free. Just need to input a few data, and I will let you know what the data is. Just going to show you an example. You're seeing my screen now in a different format, right? Can just someone confirm,
yes.
please? Yes. Okay.
No.
So let's go. If you go to the link of the assessment, you will not see exactly what I'm seeing because I've already been registered, and the first time you arrive, you see something a bit different. But this is the way then it will look after your registration. Sorry, something went wrong. Okay, so you have a dashboard with the global information of the company. And then you have the impact assessment that, as I was showing you, has 5 different areas. You're seeing here a 6th one, that is the disclosure questionnaire that I usually say it's something like those green cards that you have to fill in when you arrive in the US, saying that you do not bring bombs or guns or whatever that with you. That here is saying I don't work in the drug industry or in the army industry or something that is not possible to imagine that has a positive impact for the society. This is basically what this disclosure questionnaire is about. Other areas, as I told you, were addressing those different issues that I showed you some of them a while ago. And if you arrive into the questionnaire, you will have these different questions with different options. So in which you can learn not only the one that is more adapted to your company, but also have ideas about what the others are doing and even what you can do to increase your score. Because in most of the questions, you have the opportunity to choose the different options and understanding how the score changes. For example, in one, if I go here and say, okay, in my board of directors, I have executive employees, but I also have customers represented and community expertise also represented. Then I hit save. And I can understand that I have 0.26 out of the 0.23 points that are eligible for this question. So I can also come here and say, okay, I'm only having executive employees, but I want to set as a goal to have those customers and the community experts in my board of directors. So I can set as a goal, go here, decide, okay, I can have community experts and customers in my board, and decide what is the due date I want to have that, and create even reminders on my email. So this is to show you that this is a tool that can be used to do the assessment of the company, but also to manage the company in certain ways, in creating goals, giving those goals to some people, and create a strategy to improve in the different areas. So it's basically a tool that it's free to use. But you say, so why are you telling me about the movement tool? So what's next? Just show you then you have also a filter in which you can find easily the questions you want, either by points. You have more points and have less points, to one that the available points are further away from the ones you have, so the ones you have a bigger margin to improve. Different types of questions, the one about the operations, the ones about the impact business model. That was the example I was giving to you in terms of the solar panels that impact the CO2 emissions. So basically in not only in in the environmental section, but on the others as well, there is always a question like this one that calls impact business model introduction, in which the options would trigger some other questions that, when relevant, would allow to measure the impact created through this impact business model. Okay. When you're using the tool, you can add some people to the assessment, so you can invite team members easily if you want to do the assessment together with some others, and they can input and leave, just send invite and they receive it, can leave comments, etc. When you arrive to a score that is over 80, you can ask to become a certified B Corp if you think that is something that is of value to your company. And the process that follows is that after hitting the submitting button, there is an international team that is going to evaluate the information that you've inserted in the assessment, and will ask for some evidence for the answers that were given. That process is not as a regular audit process in which everyone is trying to look for some flaws. The idea is to confirm what was replied, and also to support in terms of helping to set the way for the improvements that can be done in some areas. Just to give you an example, there are companies that arrive to this stage with a score, and when they left that stage, they had a higher score. That's not usual, but sometimes happen because they were too demanding for themselves. So the score was increased after the revision. And if the company has the evidence to show that all the answers are according to reality, and the score is validated, then the you is closed, and the can start using the B logo in all the communications, and also have access to the different tools that the movement provides to the companies. So going back here to what I was showing you as guidance, this is more or less what happens of the process. You start by filling the B impact assessment. Sorry. Can work with your team, or can ask for support. For give you an example, it might happen that a company just goes to the site, registers, do the assessment, submits, and starts having his assessment validated. Or they can ask, usually happens, for support, saying, I'm not understanding exactly what is intended here. What are the next steps? How can I improve here? And those questions can be addressed. Some of them by B Lab, the ones that have not to do with improvements, because the improvements for having higher scores, it's something that B Lab doesn't want to be involved, because it will be on the other side validating those decisions and those improvements. But we have an ecosystem in which you can find people that have already went through the certification or through training that are able to support. And that can even be done with the usual support that company gets from consultants in environment for the environmental issues, with lawyers for the governance issues, etc. Like I was telling you, once you reach the 80 points, you can submit the assessment for review. Then you have the evaluation in company screen in terms of the background information, and then there is the different steps of the verification in which the punctuation might be adjusted, but you still have room for some conversation, some improvement, and even time to improve, like you see here, for 3 months. If your score is a bit below the 80 points, what we usually advise is that you should go with a bit over the 80 points. So if the score decreases a bit, you still are eligible for certification, in case your objective is the certification, because you might be willing to use the tool just to manage your company and to improve the impact you are creating. In fact, we have 100,000 companies using the tool, and 4,000 certified. So As you can see, it's a big difference because between the ones that are using and the ones that become certified, meaning that some did not reach the 80 points yet, and they are working on that and still improving and creating more and more impact. And some others might not even be interested, and some might just go there and check if it's an interesting tool or not. Okay, this was to show you the relative weight of the different areas that I told you about in terms of the governance, workers, community, environment, and customers, and also the impact business models. Just an example of how the score would look like. This not applicable means that there are some questions that are, well, despite the fact that at the beginning you have to insert some data, there are some questions that might not be applicable because they do not exist in your country. There is one that is very typical, that is about the living wage. That is a reality that is very common in the US and in the UK, but not in most of the other European countries, because there is no value that is commonly accepted as such for in each of the other different countries. So the recommendation is to reply not applicable, and then the points from these questions would be distributed in the other questions of the assessment. This was what I already showed you, the aspect. You have here, I forgot to mention we created recently a tool that is the SDG Action Manager, that is side by side. When you log in to do the impact assessment, there is a tool that allows you to identify what are the more relevant SDGs for your company, and in a similar way in terms of the approach that is taken by the impact assessment with multiple options to work on some of those SDGs and see how you are improving. But this one is not validated, so it's for the companies to use for their internal purposes, and even to communicate with the proper disclaimers about what they are communicating. So, like I was telling you, there are some initial information that needs to be inserted that will define the questionnaire to be more adapted to the company that you are working with, or that you are doing the assessment for. It doesn't make sense to ask about the watering systems that you use or the kind of fertilizers if you are working in a law firm, but if you are working in an agricultural firm, that would make sense. So that's for that reason, one of the things that is asked is the sector in your work, the company works in, and then also the size. And you can see here that it goes from 0 workers to whatever the number of workers you can think, meaning that you can have a company that has no one in the payroll, that has virtual office, and is still eligible for the assessment and even to become a certified B Corp. Okay. There is one thing that you need to have, that is have 12 months of operations, because some of the questions are asked about the previous year. And if you are not 12 months of operations, at least you cannot answer about the previous year. So in those cases, we created what we call the pending B Corp status. That is the solution for the companies that are less than 12 months old. And in those cases, what is asked to those companies is that they fill in the legal requirement that I was going to talk to you about now. That is also one of the key steps of the certification process. So you measure, you improve if needed, and then you have these legal requisites that need to be complied. And then I'm going to show you what they are. They are in Portuguese because they are different for each country, and you can go to the website and there is a drop down saying exactly what you should do to be legally compliant with these requirements. But basically what they say is that the companies have, in terms of their objectives, not only the great profit for the shareholders, but for all the stakeholders. And the same goes to their directors, that should have in mind the different stakeholders in their decision-making process. So this is basically the idea behind the impact assessment. How someone tell me, how are we in terms of time, so I can have Terina.
Sorry, Luís. Yeah, you can still go on.
Yeah.
You're still good.
So okay. So I was trying here. Okay, I will do it at the end. So for you to have an idea how the acceptance of the tool has been, this is the growth of the certified B Corps, and we are now over almost at the 4,000 in different parts of the world, in different areas of business. This is the scenario in Portugal, and on your left, the companies that are headquartered in Portugal and the others that are present but not headquartered in Portugal. And maybe some others that are not headquartered are already also having a presence that are not identified here. Different sizes, different areas of business, from pharma here to lawyers here to agri marketplace, so a trade platform for the farmers to arrive to the market, to a wine company, to an investment fund, to a nail spa, so you name it. But we have forecasted some following up sessions with some of these companies, so you can ask them about their experiences and learn more about them as well. So all over the world, big companies going public with a great success, being certified B Corps. Some markets already using the criteria of B Corp, so companies can be eligible for being traded on those markets. Not the main target is not the public companies, but already some public companies also are already B Corps. You are not being the only ones to hear about the B Corps. It's something that is quite spread around different universities in terms of case studies, comparisons with companies that are B Corps and not B Corps, what is the criteria behind, what is not, how the companies behave, etc. And I hope this is something that is more and more known as a tool that can be used in terms of management to measure different things, to be able to manage those different things as in an efficient way. It happens. It's been appearing more and more often in the press, and we can see here, namely with the idea of explaining why it's important to be a B Corp or how it pays, even in terms of getting cheaper money, because the companies are perceived as more resilient because they're more balanced, more competitive. I should do the disclaimer in here that these data are for B Corps, but maybe, and I'm sure that there are companies that are not certified as B Corps, but they have the same positioning, and by having that same positioning, they would be as competitive. It's not the stamp that makes them competitive, of course, it's the way they behave. So just spending like 2 minutes saying, but why these companies want to be certified B Corps? Well, maybe I'm trying to gather some information. It's something similar to when we go to a party. Maybe each of us go there by a different reason, but these are the most common reasons why companies become certified B Corps. We see that consumers are more and more demanding, and employees as well. And we, in the B Corp movement, see that these demands are fulfilled in most of the B Corps in the way people are expecting it, in terms of improving quality of life and quality of the jobs. Also in terms of knowing exactly who is behind the things I'm buying. It's not only knowing that I'm buying something that it was dealt with properly during the supply chain or during the production, but no, it's what is the entity behind this that I want to learn more, that I want to have a relationship with or not. It's joining a global community of leaders that is changing the world in this sense that was saying at the beginning that, okay, something needs to change. So we have lots of actions going on in terms of need to change the different things, the way we respect people, the way we pay people, the way we treat environment, and companies have a big role in that saying, in changing that. And if they gather a movement, they are able to do it better and faster. That's, for an example, of what is happening in terms of more than 800 companies that decided to become net zero by 2030, that are working together to achieve that goal, sharing all the know-how and the information that some have and the others don't, so they can arrive faster at this objective. And as I told you before, they can benchmark with each other, and so they can improve the impact by not only benchmarking, but seeing what the others are doing, or what can I do that the others are already doing. And it's very interesting to see that the ones that become certified do not stop. So it's a positioning more than an achievement. They keep improving in their impact and using the impact assessment as a tool. And this is something that companies that are certified have frequently shared with me, that, okay, I've already identified a couple of more points that I want to improve using the assessment, and I will work on those because I think they will create more competitiveness for my company. And they are also using it to differentiate from competitors. The B logo in packages is more and more relevant. I've seen discussions going on within the movement, companies asking each other, have you I'm thinking about changing the B logo from the back of my package to the front. Have you done that? What was the impact? I'm seeing wine companies in Portugal having the B logo and having friends saying, now I feel much more comfortable in drinking my wine because I feel good, because I think I'm contributing to something that is relevant for the society as a whole. So this idea of brands that share the values of the consumers and that have a social value that is more and more relevant for the consumer is something that is materialized in this way of communicating as a B Corp. Also the idea that I can do partnerships with companies that have the same views that I have, and I feel comfortable with that, and some interesting ideas come up. The Ben & Jerry's that they made an ice cream with beer flavor because there was a B Corp which they collaborate with. A cosmetics company that created some I'm missing the word in English, some wearings for the beauty salons that were done with jeans that were recycled by another company called Mud Jeans that has an interesting business model that is renting the jeans. So if you just don't create too much impact by buying and leaving the jeans after a certain period, you can deliver them back and then they can be like rented. And so to use those jeans that were delivered back, they created this solution so they can communicate together their concerns about the environment. This is the something that is creating a lot of buzz recently in the social media. These two companies that are very interesting ones that if I have a couple of minutes, I will let you know a bit more about, are going to work together, and they just put something out in the social media saying what is going to come out from here, what is the product that we are going to do together. And also the attraction of talent has been spotted as something that is quite relevant for the companies that become certified as B Corps, because they tend to receive, and that people are, I already have some conversations with headhunters that told me that they use the argument that the company they were working for in terms of finding some executives was telling them, okay, now you might want to go for this company because they are a B Corp, and that was something that was differentiated for the choice in terms of the next step in their careers. The raise of capital with someone that has aligned values in significant amounts. There are some investment funds that are certified as B Corps, and they tend to go and use this criteria in their investment decisions. This Governor House of Investments is a Portuguese one, so we have also already a Portuguese financial company as a B Corp. Also, in terms of the reporting, the connection of the B Impact Assessment with the SDG Action Manager, like I was telling you, and also with the GRI, helps companies to be able to report in the more common language that is used in this kind of reporting. Do we still have 5 minutes, or should I stop for questions?
I think maybe we should stop for questions.
Okay, so we leave the examples. I can leave. I was going to tell you about the examples of the B Corps, but I can put the links, and then you see them later. Or if you don't have too many questions, we can go and see the examples at the end.
Yes, we can see how it goes.
Perfect. Thank you so much until here, Luís, for these interesting insights. And we already have some questions from students that came up, or from the participants that came up throughout your presentation. But before I go into those questions, everyone who wants to ask a question directly now, just feel free to share your video and unmute yourselves and ask your question directly. So I'll give you a few seconds Don't be shy and just ask everything you want to ask.
While they are thinking, I have here someone that already asked me that if the students that are starting or already started business in their own, if they can use the B Impact assessment tool. And I thank for this question because it's something that I forgot to mention. That is something that I came across quite frequently, is that people use this to structure the business when they are starting. If they have an idea that I want to create impact with my business, this is a very interesting tool because it guides them through the different points that they should go. The assessment that I should do to my suppliers. Do I have a supplier's policy? Oh, I don't have it. So maybe I should have it because I want to start my company. Do I have a book with everything that a new employee should know about the company? No, I don't. So if I start doing it, maybe I'm structuring my company in an appropriate way to create the impact I want. In fact, I recently met someone that told me that he was working in communications and advertising, that he has won a lot of prizes. He was telling I was the person that had more prizes in Portugal. He's actually an Argentinian, and he decided to come and live in Portugal and to start a company. And he told me, Luís, what I used to structure my company was the B Impact assessment. So I started the company already changing my legal requirements to the ones of the B Corp because I used the B Impact assessment as the guide for structuring my company.
Okay, thank you so much. Actually, that was also one of the incoming questions for us throughout the presentation. Anybody wants to ask a question right now?
Can we put the questions orally?
Sure.
Okay. I think this was already answered, but just to be sure, will the presentation be available afterwards? Because unfortunately, I couldn't attend it at the first 20 minutes.
Sure, I can share it with Nova, and then they can follow up, or you can send me an email.
Okay.
And I will be glad to share it.
Congratulations.
I will put my email on the chat.
We will also have the recording available at the Roll2Play platform afterwards, so you can also access it there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so I will start asking the first question that came up throughout the presentation. That was, which categories are usually having a higher score or lower score than others in the measurement? Like, is there a general tendency? And if so, why do you think that is?
Okay, that's an interesting question. And as I showed you, they have different weights. So if you remember that bar, there are some that have more points than others. From my experience, it depends a lot on the companies. And the one, for example, for the Portuguese companies, the part regarding the workers, the section regarding the workers, it's usually highly scored because our laws are quite demanding in terms of the social care. We have a lot of holidays, etc., compared to the whole world. That is the benchmark. So when I usually want to motivate someone to increase their score while they are doing the assessment, I say, go and do the worker section and you'll be happy because you'll see your score increasing quite significant. The one that is more variable is the one about the environment. Because if we are dealing with someone that is working in a co-work space or in a consultancy business, in a rented space, they cannot have a lot of margin for improvement in terms of the impact they are causing in terms of CO2 emissions, etc., when compared to someone that has a factory. And so that is the one that has that we see more differences in terms of the scoring that you can get. But then it depends a lot on the way companies positioning themselves and what is the areas they care more about. And that's one of the interesting things of the movement is that, sorry, we don't have a minimum score for each area. So we can have companies with a big score in some of the areas and the lower score on the others that are still eligible, and others that are much better in a different area and worse in the other and also eligible. This has the beauty of being able to share best practices amongst them and learn and improve every year, every month, whatever, we try every year to distinguish the best ones in each area, and to create case studies and best practices that are available to be shared amongst the movement, the certified companies of the movement, so they can be inspired about what the others are doing to improve their scoring.
Okay, thank you so much. Everybody can also feel free to hold their hands if they want to talk right here.
I have here one in the chat about the costs. Mm-hmm. Actually, I don't know if I think this time I forgot to put it in my presentation. I'm sorry, but it's available online in the link of the bcorporation.eu. From 15 April onwards, there will be an initial cost of 250 euros for the submission fee. This is something that was created recently with the idea that if someone is going to submit, should be committed, like those events in which you have to pay some small fee, so nobody would say I go and then do not appear. And this is basically the same idea behind that, because is the creating that submission fee that will be only starting in 15th of April. Until then, the ones that submit before that won't have to pay that fee. That is something that is going just to start on the 15th of April. Then the other costs aside, what I usually say is the biggest cost that sometimes people do not account is the workload involved to do the assessment, the time that you have to spend doing the assessment. But for me, and that's why I think, and from the experience I have from the feedback of the companies, is the idea that people are working for something that is not a certification, but it's something that is going to improve the company, the efficiency of the company, etc. So, but if you account that as a cost, that should be a significant cost, because I'm saying significant because then the cost for the certification is always less than 0.1% of the revenues of the company. Okay, and it's the way it is done is by intervals based on the revenues. So it's difficult to say because it depends where you are, but independently of being in one extreme of the interval, it's always less than 0.1. Usually it's even less than that. I can say to you that the companies that pay less should be 1,000 euros, and then it's can go up from there to 20,000 if companies have millions of in revenues, but always less than 0.1% of the revenues. And it's something that is paid every year according to the revenues of the previous year. Meaning that, for example, now during this COVID situation, we have been trying to be supportive for the companies and understand if they are having trouble to support some of the costs. We will be willing to accommodate those difficulties together with them. But in fact, they are already embedded in our model, because if they are having less revenues, they will immediately pay a lower fee. So it's always binded to the revenues.
Thank you so much. I have some more questions here. So another question that reached us was, it came to my attention that on average, 1/4 of formally certified B Corps lose their certification status, although they surpass an 80-point score. Would you have familiar drivers? Why this is the case in your mind?
Sorry,
can you explain that?
I didn't get part of the question. 1/4 loses?
1/4 of formally certified B Corps lose their certification status, although they surpass the 80-point score. So why do you think that happens?
I don't know where that data comes from, and those are not the data that I have. I can tell why the companies lose their certification, but I had this during this week. We had the global meeting, and this year was the year that we had the lower attrition rate globally. There was 0.6%. That was 6% of the attrition rate, meaning that those are the companies that were certified the previous year and not certified the next year. So that's not comparable to the 25% that is 1/4 that is being mentioned. So I don't know where that data came from, but that can happen for different reasons. Companies are bought, and the new owners don't want to have the same positioning. Companies, fortunately, has not happened during this year That was something that we realized that during COVID, not a lot of companies closed, much less than in the average. So in Portugal, none. In Brazil, one in out of 100 and something. So it has been shown as quite resilient. The other thing that can happen is that they submitted something that is not according to reality, and that was identified, and sometimes happen, not always, but sometimes happens because managements change and they start changing things, and then it's identified during the 3 years, because once you do the certification, it's valid for 3 years. You just have to submit again for revalidation after 3 years, independently of using the tool whenever you want. That is always available, but the data there is going to be validated again only 3 years after. So if during those 3 years something changes a lot in terms of management, etc., and it's identified, then there is action that is taken for the sake of credibility of the certification. What else can happen? From mergers and acquisitions, sometimes companies go public, and the new investors, it's again the same kind of thing. Usually is that idea that if the control of the company changes and they decided to do something different, they do not comply anymore with the information that they supplied. But those are like, or the company says, I don't want to be certified anymore because it doesn't make sense to me. I don't see any value. But as I was telling you, the data that we have is that this is a small percentage. I would be very interested to know what is the reason. Wow, you're asking me what is the reason behind that, but how that figure comes up, what is the universe that is used to say, because 1 in 4 is very big and do not correspond to the reality that I know. And in terms, maybe I can try to address one of the questions and also try to input for this one, that is in terms of the verification steps and how it works, and so you can understand how companies can lose or not lose the certification. So once you submit the assessment to be validated, it's evaluated in an initial stage in terms of being correct, in terms of the information that is more basic, in terms of if the revenues are there, if the location are there, etc. And then it's asked information as evidence for the different questions in a way that is not exhaustive. So it's by sampling. The ones that are more relevant are checked. And once that stage is gone, that can have different interactions because the others are not convinced or ask for more evidence or make you rewrite a policy or say, okay, you said this, but you don't have evidence, so I cannot give you this score. Going through those stages, the company is eligible for certification and needs to change their bylaws according to the legal requisites in the different countries, and has the process closed. From the universe of all the certified companies, 10% are audited every year randomly. So if they are not complying, and if they are, it's another way they can lose their certification. Every company that becomes certified has a file that is public. You can go to the website and search by area of business and location, and they have their score there in the different areas. If someone thinks they are not behaving like that, they can be pointed out and they will be checked again. And if they are not acting as they are saying they are acting, and sometimes that happens, not often, very rarely, but happens, they will lose the certification. But again, never 1 in 4. So.
Thank you so much. I have one final question for you in order to not exceed our time limit. So another question that reached us is, do you constantly update the criteria catalog of the assessment tool, meaning that as the industries and the environment change, so does the assessment tool?
That's a very good question that I should have mentioned during my presentation, and today I forgot to. I was telling you that every 3 months, every 3 years, companies need to submit their assessment again for validation. And yes, the assessment changes usually every 3 years as well to evolve with all the things that are evolving in the different areas. We all know that in terms of environment, the demand is becoming more and more relevant, and more criteria more stringent. Also in terms of diversity, different themes that are within the B impact assessment that are things that are evolving quite fast. So we adapt, yes, the B impact assessment every 3 years, meaning that we push the companies to be not only to become certified and stand still, but also to evolve and to grow in the direction that the B impact assessment directs them to. Meaning that if someone has 80 points and does nothing for 3 years, I'm pretty sure if they do the new version, they will stay below the 80 points and they might lose their certification if they have done nothing to improve the different areas.
Perfect. Thank you so much for taking your time and answering all the questions.
It's a pleasure. Just let me say one thing that I forgot to address, because the question about the verification was also saying something about self-reporting. It's not actually, it's self-reporting until you submit the assessment. You can use that for self-reporting. And the SDG Action Manager, that is the one for the SDGs, is actually can be read as a self-reporting because it has no validation. But the B impact assessment, as soon as you submit for validation, is not self anymore, because there is a global team that is going to check you as any others. And that's why then you can become certified and eligible for use that in your communication, etc.
Thank you very much, Luís. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us here. First of all, we're really sorry that we were a bit delayed on our time, but we hope you enjoyed it. We really enjoyed having you here with us. We wanted to lastly to ask if who is comfortable doing it, if you want to turn your cameras on so we could take a picture of all of us here to put on our social media afterwards. And also adding to this, to have the first-hand news that we've already mentioned before, that we are preparing another event with the B Lab that will be a roundtable with some B Corps. So if you are interested, keep in touch with our social media that we will we'll announce it there.
I've just inserted in the chats some links with the examples of companies I was thinking about sharing with you, but those are not the ones that we are going to have in the other sessions. So you can use them as appetizers for the other sections, because there is no overlap.
Great, thank you, Luís. So smile. Great, thank you very much, everyone, and have a nice evening and a great weekend.